Thank you for the introduction, Joe, and thank you, Charles, for a lovely talk. Really excited to be here today. I chose the title of this talk, "The Future in the Night," as a slight twist on the sort of more dreaded future of the night, which we've heard quite a lot about in media over the past few years, and I'm not sure how well known it is here, but grassroots venues up and down the UK and culture in the UK is under quite severe threat, and I'm sure most of you, especially those of you working in the sector, have felt that quite proximately. So I'm going to be looking sort of briefly back at the history of dance music to tell a story of nightlife in the UK, whereas we can sort of date the origins of modern dance music back to the beginning of playing recorded music on vinyl records to audiences in the early 70s. Today I'm going to be focusing on the story that could not have happened outside of the very particular constellation of social forces and identities in Britain at the end of the 20th century, from the second summer of love in '88 up to the modern day. I'll be using this story to think about how nightlife can help to stimulate popular, creative, social engagement with music and art more generally, maybe some of that instrumental engagement that Charles just mentioned, and urging us to sort of consider dance music as a more serious art form, which should be treated and protected as such. And we have examples of that across the world, but notably not so much in the UK. And secondarily, to consider how, when managed correctly, it has been and continues to be an important source of revenue to cross-subsidise venues and platform other forms of live music, visual and dramatic arts. I've chosen to use the word rave quite deliberately, and I'm sure it evokes a variety of feeling among different groups in the audience. But as a social phenomenon, rave transformed certain elements of British social and cultural life and spanned the geography counter to traditional narratives about where culture happens and what we might expect rural culture to look like, causing a profoundly global and cosmopolitan popular movement across the course of the 80s and 90s. And it took place outside of traditional cultural channels and institutions that existed in the UK at that time, to the fields and recently shuttered factories that populated this island at the apogee of Thatcherism. To keep things simple today and to kind of be mindful of time, I'm just going to break it down into three main periods. So rave finds its origin as this kind of unique meeting point between elements of Jamaican dub sound system culture, itself intertwined with the unique story of Black British history and the descendants of the Windrush generation whose blues parties animated grassroots neighbourhoods in Brixton to St Paul's in Bristol and Manchester's Moss Side. Encountering the nomadic force of British counterculture in the free festival movement, and mostly a rock-oriented movement, where the moment when the first house and techno records reached Britain from working-class black communities in Chicago and Detroit, respectively. And I mean, the meeting point of this, I find very interesting, and other writers and art makers such as Jeremy Deller have documented this in more sort of visceral detail, but I think that the thing that excites me about that was there's a moment where sort of something new happens from a meeting of a series of hyper-local cultures, and it's this experience of futurity and future shock was quite exciting, I think. And what happens over the course of the next decade is there's a push to criminalise the rave movement, which is really how we remember it by today. And with that, a commercialisation happens and the growth of the clubbing and festival industries as large, international, and very commercially viable and profitable businesses really emerges. And over the course of the 2000s, we have this proliferation of festival culture, and cities use dance music with even, to some better fated other experiences, such as Brighton and Hove's Big Beach Boutique in the early 2000s. But over the course of that decade, you really see the consolidation of market share by large American conglomerates, in particular Live Nation, acquiring its largest global competitor, Ticketmaster, in 2009. They own the O2 Academy Group and Festival Republic, the largest festival organisation in the UK. And over that decade in the 2010s, we see really sharpening fundamentals, market fundamentals of people working in live music and dance music and entertainment. And I think what happens is we really see the foundation start to crumble over that decade, but the model continues right up until COVID, at which point we really enter what we now kind of widely recognise as a total crisis, is calamity. So we have, yeah, I mean, what I would like to say with that is basically, yeah, we need to look today at how we're going to, sorry, one sec. Yeah, I mean, we lost 125 venues in 2023, and in 2024, a venue closed every fortnight. We are in an existential crisis for continuing this sort of very important part of the cultural sector today. And if we don't kind of continue to protect it, we're going to lose this vital revenue stream for the other arts that I mentioned earlier on, and a place where people can really come together. Youth cultures can emerge and be invented, and people can share sort of artistic creation, and this really important part of the talent pipeline would start to fall apart. So I'm making a case to protect it, to consider it as a serious art form, and to really invest in it. In the future of placemaking as well, which we've seen, and I'm sure we can get into later on in discussions. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Tom